Welcome to our very last video discussion for 2013 EDN Technologies Education. So this brings us to a close for this video discussion forum, and we're going to now go through some of the material you need to have an understanding of from the readings and the video clips to look at this week, so that we can have a robust and in-depth final discussion at our whole course discussion group. So here you'll see a number of examples of how to integrate technologies into other learning areas. So with design and technology, generally for almost every activity or design challenge you would think to create in design and technology, you need some context in which to base that challenge. So for example, if in science you were learning about flight and looking at all the forces involved and the different mechanics of the design of wings and ailerons in order for flight to be achieved, then you could very easily integrate that with design and technologies to enable students to create their own flying craft or paper plane or aerodynamic wing or whatever the challenge was that students needed to complete in order to solve a particular problem related to flight. The important aspect is that the two subject areas, or the two learning areas, focus on the challenge from very different perspectives. From a science perspective, it's all about learning the fundamental concepts of physics related to flight. And there's certain concepts that have to be developed, and that might be developed very easily through a process whereby they're doing an experiment, looking at various wing designs and testing those and measuring to identify various properties that confirm or otherwise an hypothesis. But from a design and technology perspective, we're looking at it from an engineering. So looking at a whole range of different possible solutions and trying to determine which is the most effective solution to solve a particular problem. Very, very similar challenges, could be even exactly the same challenge, whereby students are going through and exploring different solutions to a problem in terms of different wing designs to enable an aircraft to fly. But from a science perspective, you're looking at it in order to learn scientific principles, so the learning outcomes related to the science curriculum or the science learning area curriculum. From a design and technology perspective, you're looking at it in terms of students selecting various materials, looking at the affordances or various properties of different designs and coming up with that which best solves the problem that was set in a design challenge, for example. Now with digital technologies, you'll see the same opportunities, where if you're doing a task, say in English, that involves students producing a presentation, then looking at that as a challenge in terms of the digital technologies that might be usable in communicating that presentation could be a digital technologies activity. So if the task is from an English perspective to communicate a story or a narrative in some particular way, then as a digital technologies activity, thinking about it in terms of, okay, we've got something to communicate. What are the various technologies that will help address that problem? Who does it need to be communicated to? How long does it have to remain? What sort of modes could be available to communicate that? Could it be creating a wiki or a digital movie or some sort of website or word process document? There could be a whole range of different approaches to solving that problem of communication from a digital technologies perspective. From an English perspective and the English curriculum, there'll be certain learning outcomes to be achieved from that perspective. But from the digital technologies perspective, there'll also be a whole range of activities that can be addressed. Now, about 10 years ago, there was a big move to actually integrate across all the learning areas. And in Queensland, It was called the New Basics Project. And there were a number of modules developed whereby students would work for a term, so 10 weeks, on one thematic approach, one thematic topic, and there'd be activities for all of the learning areas that supported that thematic learning. Unfortunately, it was a costly approach and it was eventually done away with, but many schools were involved in that trial where all of the curriculum was done in a purely integrated approach. You'll find some of those still in existence in schools, where you'll find various modules or activities that still remain, but very few schools now try to do a fully integrated approach just because of the effort involved in initially setting it up. But it was quite useful at its time. So there's a number of videos there to have a look at just to explain what an integrated approach to the curriculum involves. Now the big advantage is it frees up time. If you've got say 40 hours, we can incorporate English and maths and technologies all together in the one learning activity. Then while individually you might have had 10 hours for English, 20 hours for mathematics, 5 hours for technologies, and doing them all as individual learning areas and addressing them individually, you've got that sort of allocation. But if you combine all those times together and do one activity that addresses all of the learning outcomes that they would have been achieved individually, you can then get students to work on much more involved project-based learning activities. Now I've given you here a couple of illustrations of practice from the for the Australian curriculum from AITSL, and you can have a look at those which address the learning outcomes that you as a teacher need to be able to show in terms of your professional standards. And then finally, I've given you again a few examples of project-based learning. Of course, really good integration needs some sort of thematic approach where all of the learning areas can address a particular theme, and project-based learning fits into that very, very well, where you set out a project that has to be addressed, normally a problem-based design challenge type project, and each of the learning areas can contribute to that project, whereby students, as they work through their project, need to address various activities and are assessed against various elements of their learning across a range of learning areas. So have a look at those videos and they'll help you get a better idea of what project-based learning involves. We did look at that in a fair amount of detail in I think it was week 4 or 5, but this is a bit of a summary. And finally, as we come to the end of our course, we've got 2 videos just released from ACARA that provide a brief description of both design and technologies and digital technologies. So as little summaries, 5-minute summaries of the learning areas, you can have a look at those and hopefully see that your understanding of the 2 subjects that have been explored in this course are covered in what is described by ACARA. Of course, that'll be being rolled out to all of our schools next year, and certainly there are a few schools now that are already implementing aspects of design and technology and digital technologies. So you may be lucky enough to be out on practicum where the school is incorporating those new learning areas into their curriculum. So we have our final whole course discussion this week. So I hope to see you all there, and we'll have a wrap up focusing around your assessment. Of course, that's what you'll all be working on at the moment. It's good to see that a few of you have already completed the assessment, and I've started having a look at a few of those. You will have all now received your marks for your first assessment task, the quizzes and the completion activities. So you can see how you went with those, and in the main everyone did quite well. Probably the main area where people lost marks was where they didn't actually submit things. So hopefully you'll all have learnt from that and you'll submit your final assessments So you've got your 2 units to submit for your second assessment task, one on design and technology, one on digital technologies. So make sure you get those done. Now they do need to come in as Google Docs so that we can provide that feedback directly onto your documents, and likewise they need to come in as YouTube videos. So, and make sure you make them public. Same with your Google Doc. Make sure you click on that share button, make it publicly available on the internet so that we can then access it. And you'll also then see the link that you can copy and paste into the text box when you submit your assignment. And likewise with your Google video, make sure you make that public and copy and paste the link to that in. So our final whole course discussion, or whole group discussion, will be from 9 to 10 on Wednesday. But you've also got the opportunity to attend your tutorial groups. Now, there is a little bit of a technical glitch going with the Learning at Griffith website at the moment, where some of the tutorial discussions are not showing up in the calendar. But if you go to the left and look under tutorial discussion in the left menu panel, you'll see a list of all the different tutorials that are being conducted, and you can access them from there. So if it's not showing up in the calendar, we've got our technicians looking at that at the moment, trying to see why they haven't shown up there, but you can still access them by going into tutorial discussion on the left panel menu. So make sure you avail yourself of that. It's a good opportunity to talk to your tutors. Doesn't matter which tutor you get involved with, but given that most of you are now finishing up your final assessment, it's a good opportunity to ask some any final questions and go through and discuss what you've done for your assessment. Of course, you can still continue to ask questions via the course discussion panel or discussion group, and I encourage you to ask questions there. If you email me directly, I will eventually get back to you, but I will address in more detail and more quickly questions asked on the discussion panel. Of course, then they can be shared with others. So that starts bringing us to an end of Technologies Education. I hope you've enjoyed the course. You're certainly one of the first in Australia to be prepared to teach this new subject area, or subjects, and hopefully that will stand you well as you go out onto your practicum placements and you begin your careers in teaching. So best of luck, and I've very much enjoyed teaching you about the digital technologies subject and the design and technology subject of the technologies learning area over the last 9 weeks, and I look forward to seeing many of you when you go out into schools and are doing wonderful things with the technologies learning area. And I may even see you again in 4th year with the TPAC subject, where we'll go through and explore how to use ICTs in the curriculum in more detail, based upon all of your experiences during your course of study. But that's another subject, and that's in 4th year. So until then, bye for now.